the Gators. Because whether you like them, woo, or you don't, they are the best thing, woo, in the football world today. Woo!
Welcome back to Work 'em Silly. The Gators took care of business this weekend, sort of, against Charlotte. And now we are looking ahead to the Kentucky game. I'm joined today by Bad Take Peyton, Doug Dickey, and Mac Murphy. How are we feeling, boys? You guys were all at the game with me. What did you think about what you saw?
Silence.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, my dad is never allowed to go to a Florida game again.
Yep. He's banned.
Because every time he's there, except for the year that Luke Del Rio beat Kentucky like 48-7, we kind of suck. So that's rule number one. And then other than that, yeah, I mean, like I feel like everybody else has already said it at this point. It's just it's kind of questionable offensive play calling and or game management at the line from the quarterback, and maybe that's why it didn't look so great. There was one point where I yelled, "Why are you running the ball there, coach?" or something along those lines. It was late in the second half when there was the entire Charlotte defense in the box, and we still ran to the left straight into it, and I was kind of curious what was going on with that. But I think generally, I don't feel awful that, if we can clean up some of the red zone stuff, then, I mean, we absolutely dominated Charlotte. When you look at other statistics, it's just the score never showed it. So that's a bummer.
Right.
But
thank you, Dan Mullen.
well, but I mean, we won. It's not like he was we lost, and I'm saying that we got more yards. We did dominate them legitimately. I don't.
Yeah, we kicked their ass for sure, but yeah, it was just pretty boring.
Didn't feel good.
Yeah, we said at the end of the game there was no satisfying crunch. It was like last night's Taco Bell reheated in the microwave. It's Taco Bell.
Make a turd.
Exactly. It'll make a turd. That's kind of what we made this last weekend. What do you think about what you saw, Mac? Just kind of broadly.
Yeah, I and looking back on it, I'm actually not as critical of it as some may be. Yes, it wasn't satisfying, but when you look at it, we dominated from start to finish. You know how they say some games it wasn't as close as the score indicated. That was one of them. That game was not close. Granted, I had some PTSD where I was expecting they're going to break a big play and make it a one possession game and things are about to get weird. Right. That never happened. Defense played great except for a few busted plays in one drive. Offensively, my biggest takeaway and what I've said about this game is if you change 3 plays that on third and goal that work and are a touchdown, so 3 plays work, this game is 34-7 or 37-7, something like that. And then everyone's tone is different. Do 3 plays really make this team that much better and make them appear that much better? I think we're somewhere in the middle. We're not as bad. The game wasn't as bad as people think, and I don't think we're as great as people thought we were after Tennessee. I think we're just somewhere in the middle. The truth lies somewhere in the middle between those two. So that's kind of what I think.
Right. I mean, we scored 6 times. Is that 6? We scored 6 times. So
yeah.
While you would like to see those 3s turn into 7s or 6s in maybe our team's case, it was kind of an anticlimax. But Peyton, what did you see that you liked and didn't like about the game?
Well, this was the Trace Mack coming out party. Finally, we have a kicker. I don't know why
Who
he
would have
wasn't
thought the
starting
5-star is a good kicker?
the 5-star kicker, and we might actually be making 7 points every time we get a touchdown now. We just have to get the touchdowns to begin with. But I was never nervous about this game. Like it never felt like they were going to get back into it. It was more just like frustrating we couldn't punch it in late in the game. Um, our defense is phenomenal. Maybe this is just like 2012 again, where our defense is awesome and it keeps us in every single game. And the offense is just, you want a little bit more out of it. I think we were getting our offensive line healthy. I think we were getting ETN. I mean, just less tread on the tire, or giving him more tread on the tire, so to say. Um, if we were going to have a down game, I'm glad it was a game that we had won, that we win. It goes into the win column. If we continue to progress and win, no one's even going to remember this game.
Yeah, and
And
I think this is kind of a look ahead spot too because Kentucky. I mean, the gap between Florida and Kentucky, obviously, since cocksucker Stoops has come into Lexington, that gap has closed, and they've beat us a couple times, and they're actually favored in this game. So it could be that the team was coming off a big Tennessee win, and they're looking to continue that success with Kentucky, but that can't happen this week. This is not a team you can overlook. Not that there's really, not that it's a look ahead spot, but hopefully they practice better than they did last week because it just looked kind of. It looked like they were sleepwalking out there, to be honest with you.
I don't know. I don't think they looked like they were sleepwalking. I mean, we were on schedule every drive. We had the ball, minus a few where we punted, but we were on schedule until we got down to the red zone or first and goal. Like it wasn't like we clunked for 90% of the game and had a few big plays that put us in scoring position and capitalized there. Like we had six, I think minus the 54-yard field goal. I think we started on the other side of the 50 on that. We didn't move the ball too well there. I can't remember. But for the most part, we put together a few first downs every drive. It wasn't like we had a whole lot of 3-and-outs. So the whole looked like we were sleepwalking. I don't like the energy was there in defense.
The defense played great, but
And then the energy
on offense.
I disagree with like there not being a whole lot of juice. Like, yeah, it didn't look great at times, but I don't think it was a lazy effort by the team. I kind of buy what Billy was saying. It was like, we just got to play better in the red area. Like they played pretty good football, being down 3 offensive linemen between from the 20 to the 20. I mean, it was just they got down there, and I don't know if it's something with the scheme that that could be tweaked, or if it was not having 3 starters down there. And granted, Mertz didn't have a whole hell of a lot of time to throw the ball, and some protections probably could have been better. But I think you chalk that up to being down 3 offensive linemen, and that kind of goes into what I think of one of the key players this week is if Kingsley is back, I like our odds. If he's not, I'm a little worried about running the ball because we haven't ran the ball consistently against without him, except for that McNeese game. But that was a worse team than Charlotte. So,
yeah, you talked a little bit about red zone being an issue this past week. Doug, you mentioned earlier today that Kentucky has a pretty. What's the deal with their red zone defense? It's bad or good? I forget.
No, it was Mac talking about the third down defense is like 115th in the country or 105th in the country but they have the 122nd strength, hardest strength of schedule up to this point. So it's like they're not doing well getting off the field against teams that Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, um, Akron, and Vanderbilt.
What, they were going tempo or
And
something?
so they're not doing very well.
Oh,
I don't think so.
I have no
you were
idea.
You were saying they're having trouble getting off the field. I thought you were talking about substitutions. Carrot, I'm a dumbass.
No. No. Yeah, holding them on third down, and that has been the biggest point to me up to this point. And my dad is a Kentucky fan. Um, he was talking a lot about how he's talked to some of his friends who still live in the area that are obviously big fans, and just trying to figure out what is the deal with. They just don't look good. I mean, I think it was after the Akron game, Mark Stoops was in his press conference saying this is another game where we won by 30 and I'm pissed off. So I think I don't know, they don't have a great win yet, and I mean they're 1-0 in the SEC East against Vanderbilt. I don't know how good Vanderbilt is this year, and I think that Florida is 1-0 against a better opponent in the East, obviously, and then obviously has a harder schedule up to this point, even with the McNeese and the Charlotte game.
Sure.
So I just don't know. I'm not super down on this game. I don't want to say not worried about it, because I know that it's their Super Bowl and they'll go crazy in all the ways that they can, and it's always an ugly game, it seems like. But I just feel like Kentucky's not got a whole. They can't walk around like they have a big dick to swing this year, versus up to playing Florida in years past when they've beaten us.
Yeah, and you also mentioned that Devin Leary already has 5 interceptions on the year, right?
Yeah, and he threw 2 against Vanderbilt. Yeah. If you take the 2 pick sixes that the Vanderbilt quarterback threw, which I have not gone back and look at the game, look at the highlights or anything. I would assume if it's a pick six, it's probably they're backed up, or they're just really, really awful decisions and not necessarily great plays. It's certainly possible that a DB jumped the route, but I just feel like if you take away those 2 plays mathematically, I think it's like a 3-point differential at the end of the game. Obviously, those plays happen. That contributes to the score. Not getting turnovers is something that is kind of plaguing Florida right now. But it feels like if there's a game where the defense can kind of get something to happen, a guy that's already thrown 5 interceptions against, again, Ball State, EKU, Akron, and Vanderbilt, he's might be turnover prone. He might be what we were concerned Mertz was going to be.
Yeah, we might be duck hunting.
I think that their offense is almost the anti-Florida. So, Mertz only has 1 interception on the year, and if that's even his fault is up for debate too. But, we're not pushing the field. We're not, extending the field. We're not going for big explosive plays. Mertz has an almost 80% completion percentage on the year because we're kind of dinking and dunking our way through. We're staying ahead of the sticks. Whether we're stalling out or not, at least we're getting first downs. Where Kentucky is, on the other hand, they might go 3 and out, but they also might hit a 70-yard bomb. And I think that's part of the reason why he's throwing so many interceptions, is because they really are going deep. And they've got really good wide receiver core who could blow the top off. So, we just got to play, protect. We got to make sure our cornerbacks, and we got to get the right cornerbacks out there. Our cornerback 1 hasn't been the best this year, so maybe we're looking at a different lineup of those guys on the outside to play man on these. I mean, I don't know, but cornerback 1 isn't playing cornerback 1-esque.
They're also blowing the top off of, again, some pretty not stellar opponents. I think that is I don't want to beat the dead horse or disagree just to disagree, because I hear all those things. I don't know.
Well, this team hasn't performed well.
I
Yeah, you go ahead.
I feel like my dad is like always negative, like always like, oh, Florida will beat, Florida's going to beat them. Kentucky will hang around for like a quarter or two, or maybe the first half, and then Florida will start to take over. Normally, I don't. I'm like, okay, well, normally I do believe him because in my entire lifetime they've only won 3 times. But even last year, like I was way more confident than I felt like this year, just because we had AR. But obviously that didn't prove to work out, and I just feel like this year, I think the defense keeps us in the game. I mean, even Tennessee, well, they kind of went away from the deep ball, and it worked for them a
Well,
couple times, but
that
we
was my
played pretty
concern.
good
Is
against it.
this defense all year? Their one weakness has been the deep ball. So Utah hit the deep ball. Tennessee hit it a couple times. So that's my worry. I mean, we talked about Marshall. You know, that first touchdown for Tennessee, he didn't even see the ball until the play was over. So that is concerning. But the fact that they are willing to call the long ball, they're probably going to hit a couple of them. But if they try to run the ball, they're just not going to get anywhere.
And the weakness that you're talking about too, though, is literally 3 plays. Utah was 1 touchdown where the coverage that wasn't going to be a touchdown, but 2 guys ran into each other, and then the 2 touchdowns against Tennessee that were, well, one was a pretty deep pass to get them in.
Well, Charlotte had a deep throw too, didn't they? Or no, he was over the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, it was like 4 yards past the line.
And then there was another one where the coverage busted, but I think that there was a hold that should have been called on that play too, keeping forget whether it was Sapp or Princely from getting to Jalen Jones on that particular throw. So
I think
you count those things, but
I'm not too worried with the deep ball. I think, will they connect on one? Probably. But I don't think, I think our pass rush has been getting better week by week.
I agree.
And as much as I think we were pretty critical of Princely after the Utah game, he has played pretty good football. Excuse me. He's played pretty good football the past 3 games. Sapp is playing really well. The young guys have been, like, Searcy's been pretty good off the edge as well. So I think the emergence of these young guys has been good. I think the safety play has been better. And Jaden Hill at the nickel, Peyton talked about it last week. He's been playing pretty dang good as well. And Marshall, I don't know what the deal is. I don't think there's going to be change up. I think he's your cornerback 1. He's going to be out there for the rest of the year. And then you're going to see Kimber and Moore kind of rotating like they are. And then when if Moore is fresh and Marshall needs a rest, you can maybe throw Moore and Kimber out there. But Marshall's going to lead the corners with reps. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. And I don't know what his deal is and why he hasn't been playing as good. I don't know if
he said they were going to shock the world at SEC Media Days.
I think
every time somebody puts that out there, that something goes bad.
Well, he's talking about our defensive line.
And they are so
they're the strength of the team.
I think Jason Marshall. It would be nice for him to have a game. Have a game this week where kind of silences the doubters.
A good time for a coming
out
party for sure.
Yeah. And he hasn't really been targeted except for deep balls, and I don't know if that's something on film that people have really exploited because he's great like when he can get his hands on you, but there were a couple plays where he could not like the one you said, Champ, when he didn't even see the receiver have the ball, that touchdown catch he gave up against Tennessee. Like, you know, if he can just get his hands up, I think he'll be fine because it hasn't been like we've like if you look at except for the Utah game, those two long passes that Tennessee had, they were both like good throws. Like credit to Joe Milton, like they were on the money, and we had a dude like within a foot of there. It was just dropped in a bucket and a good catch.
Well,
So
they just
sometimes,
weren't calling a lot of that, which is that was what I thought they were doing wrong the whole time. If they were throwing the ball around, then they it might have been a different story. But
yeah,
that
I,
every time they
I,
did go to it, it worked. Which
I think
might be because they were running the ball a lot.
I think our DBs they've been playing way more physical this year, which I do like. They've been not afraid to get a pass interference, and that's the style I want. Like make them call pass interference. Don't like give up the if it's a close call, make the ref make that decision, but don't don't be scared. I don't want to like just barely touch him a little too much and then get a flag called on me. No, fuck it, because if he catches it and he gets 50 yards, then
You're fucked.
you're fucked. And then the other way, all right, I'm gonna see what this crew is calling today. If they're gonna be real strict on it, then you adjust, but you don't start out cautious. Like you always, see what you can get away with. You get away with it, and then fuck it, keep mugging them.
I love it. I love it. Let's move on to some predictions. What do you guys? What's a couple things you want to see, need to see, and then give us a final score. We'll start with Peyton.
So I want to see a continuation of driving down the field. I think that's what Billy wants to do. Long, sustained drives that eat up clock. I think we're going to stick to that. Maybe just a couple throws that go for 25-yard touchdowns. If we stall out in the red zone, let's score before we get to the red zone. And I think we'll have a better day. Maybe feed ETN the rock and have all of our offensive linemen healthy, and we can have a hell of a day. And defense plays the way that they've been playing. I think I've had a little bit of a curse when I talk shit about players. They end up doing a lot better the next week. So hopefully Jason Marshall has a coming out party and he just has like an interception or pick six or anything like that, who can just help out the offense by getting a little bit more points on the board. So I do think it's going to be a little bit of a rock fight. For some reason, Florida, Kentucky these past couple of years has felt like a Big Ten game where there's a lot of punts. There's a lot of defensive struggle. It's not pretty. I'm glad that it's a noon game. So and I'm hoping that Kentucky fans aren't taking their coach's advice and drinking and showing up to the game early. I hope they forget to set their alarms and they miss the game. And I think Florida will win this game 23-20.
23-20. All right. Peyton thinks it's going to be a close game. What do you think, Mac?
So I'm a little more confident this week. I think our defense is really fucking good. I don't think statistically Kentucky's offense isn't really doesn't scare me. I'm looking now. They're averaging less yards than us. So 396 yards a game, and like we said earlier, they've played the 120th ranked strength of schedule to date, and we played like the 20th hardest schedule to date. I think we'll stop them on offense. I think they'll have under 300 yards of offense, probably around 250 or maybe 275 ish. I think they'll score 10 or 13 points maybe, as long as we don't give them a short field and muff a punt or something like that. I think we are we'll be in business, and that's the thing. If we don't make mistakes, if we don't beat ourselves, we're going to win this game. That's my opinion and what I think. I think offensively, if we can establish a run, which they I'm looking, they're a little better than us in the run, but again, they haven't played any these teams they've played.
You're saying against the run or offensively?
Yeah, they're pretty good against the run defensively, but the teams that they have played, Vanderbilt was down 17 nothing or what 20 like that, and so they had to throw the ball. They had to, and they did. They had 2 pick sixes, so that was evident that they probably got off schedule and were throwing the ball. So if we stay on schedule, can run the ball. And this isn't, I'm not saying our offensive line's great, but I would be willing to bet they haven't played an offensive line as good as our offensive line will be as long as Kingsley's back. And they haven't played a defensive line that's as good as our defensive line, like going at this point. They probably haven't seen the speed that we have at this point in the season. We've seen 2 offensive lines that are much better than theirs, in my opinion, in Tennessee and Utah. We've seen 2 defensive lines that are much better than their defensive line. Utah, even though they were down starters, have a phenomenal defensive line. I mean, they've held almost everyone to under 10 points, it seems. And Tennessee has one of the best pass rushers in the SEC. So I think our strengths are our defensive line and not turning the ball over on offense. I think that's a strength. And in a running game, and they always say a running game, defense and your running game travel. And I think it might be boring at times, might be slow, but I like us to win somewhere around like 21-10, 24-13, something like that.
Nice. 24-13. So you're
I'll still go 24-13.
You're thinking a two-score game for the Gators.
Yeah.
All right. I'll go next. I think you guys are both right. This is going to be a low-scoring affair. Neither one of these offenses are going to be the Florida's offense by default is just not a high-scoring offense, and I don't think Kentucky is going to be able to produce a ton of offense because I think like we've said before, our defense is fucking good, and I think that our defense is going to win us this football game. But I do think that Kentucky's probably going to have a couple big plays, but it's just not going to be consistent. A lot of 3-and-outs probably we're going to see from them. A lot of punts. Peyton mentioned that this is a Big Ten game. But, yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think it's going to be something like 17-10 Florida. So, Gators cover. Shocking.
I have a quick update. The line is down to Kentucky
by 1.
Yeah, I saw that too.
When I made the sheet today for Quick Draw, it was 2.5. So maybe there's an injury or something.
I think the money's just coming in.
It's got to. All right, Doug, take us home. What do you think is going to happen? What do you want to see?
Okay, so I thank you for taking my intro point there. I'm now scrambling, trying to figure out a new talking point. Appreciate that, Peyton. I am not super afraid of this game. I think that the line moving to Kentucky only favored by 1 when it started at like 3.5. I even saw somebody say that they saw 4.5 at one point. I think that it's Vegas doesn't know anything sometimes is the way I feel. And I feel like that this is another one of those examples. I think that Mac made an excellent point that we have faced better defensive lines and offensive lines. And I think that is an advantage, as frustrating as it was to drop the first game to Utah and have that kind of bitter taste in your mouth. I was thinking about it back then. I was like, do I wish that we played 3 cupcakes and then played Kentucky and then played Tennessee, or then played Tennessee and then played Kentucky? or do I like that I kind of know where the team is at and feel like this is a team that could actually get better and could improve on some things and appears to have a coaching staff that is working with the team. And I think that is what we have. That is an advantage that we have because I don't think that Kentucky really knows what they have yet. I think that they will probably hit a long touchdown similar to Tennessee. The Ray Davis, their running back, he might bust one open and get like a really long return, or if they get it down in a short yardage situation at the goal line, he might be able to get through. But I just feel like they have had such a slow start in some of the game. I mean, I think they beat Eastern Kentucky by like 11, something like that. Yeah, 11. It was 28-17. So I don't remember what the yards looked like in that game, but Eastern Kentucky is not. I would imagine is probably like a less than Charlotte to a degree, or like similar to Charlotte. I know we didn't beat Charlotte by a whole lot, but we have the issues, and we've discussed those about the red zone there. So as long as we can score points, get into some situations, and I would like to see. I know that we've all said, well, part of the reason Mertz probably hasn't thrown a lot of interceptions this year, turned the ball over a lot, is because he's not taking risks. I would like to see like a couple, if we get down and he throws an arm punt into the end zone and it's a touchback. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, it's better to score the points. But I like, a guy like, what's his name? Is it Jackson? Khalil Jackson? Is that his name? The guy that had the crazy catch against Tennessee. Him or Douglas to get above a DB in the end zone like Douglas did against Utah, something like that. So yep. I will say all those things combined. Yeah, exactly. And I think we can take a little bit of those risks a little bit more. And I think that maybe when Napier said that some of these things are easy fixes, that he is talking about like checking out of a run when the box is stacked and moving into something that's a little bit better, doing some things that that allow Mertz to have a little bit more authority to be comfortable to make some of those calls. So if we can, like Peyton said, run the ball with ETN. I know he was kind of getting some rest this past week, and get some decent protection from the offensive line. I think that Florida can win this game. I'll say 23-14.
All right, 23-14. Another 2-score game called. Yeah, I agree. I think Trey Smack is going to be crucial yet again too. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be one of those days. So hopefully he doesn't take a shit this week and he can continue to produce.
Yeah, making field goals on the road is, when you're on the road in the SEC, you got to get every point that you can, and you can't leave points on the field. And we left points on the field at Utah, and we saw how that kind of just it takes the wind out of the sails of a drive. Like if you drive 60 yards and you get down there, then nothing to show for it.
Well, every game we've done that, except for
it changes.
I mean, we did it versus plan. Utah. We did it versus Tennessee right off the bat. Left 11 on the board in the first quarter, and then last week we scored 6 times and got 22 points. So.
And credit, I will say one more thing.
If we can go for it.
One more thing. Mark Stoops can stand up in his press conference and say that like Kentucky fans are going to show up and be drunk before noon. It's just, and I believe that Kentucky fans will show up and be drunk before noon. Like I said, Dad's been to a few Kentucky games. They like to drink their moonshine at the tailgates and everything, and they serve beer in Kroger Field now to the commoners. They finally made that switch this season. But it's just reality that fans show up late at noon games, regardless of the opponent, and it's just not as comfortable as it is at night. It's you don't have the excitement because you don't feel the intensity. It is beneficial to Florida that this game is a noon game, even with Kentucky fans being drunk and showing up. I'm very glad to see that because it just doesn't feel like quite a big matchup as it could have if it were a night game. So
absolutely. But I know that by noon we'll all be drunk. Unfortunately, we won't be going to the game this weekend, but we'll be on our respective couches, making our neighbors pissed off by how much we're yelling at inanimate objects and people that can't hear us. But it's going to be a fun weekend. We've all predicted a Gators win. I think we all honestly feel like Florida's going to win this game. But yeah, we'll see you next week on Woo!